Listen to a conversation between a student and a philosophy professor.
Hi, Melissa. Your rough draft for your paper is looking very promising so far.
Thanks. I still have some reading to do. Postmodernism is pretty challenging, so...
Well, you're off to a good start. So, anything else about the class or postmodernism since we have a few minutes before my next appointment?
Well, actually, in class you talked about a French philosopher, Lyotard. You said he didn't believe in stories or something like that. That stories were invalid?
Okay, I think I see. First of all, you understand what he, remember what Lyotard said about the grand narrative?
Not really.
Okay, have a seat.
All right.
It's not quite the same way you're thinking of narratives, not stories. Lyotard meant narrative as in a way of understanding the world. How can I explain this? Grand narrative, it's like an idea that helps people make sense of history. Like, when you picture the early Middle Ages in Europe, what do you think?
Okay, like, there weren't a lot of cultural achievements then. Lots of wars, but not a lot of important art or books or anything. Like, it was the Dark Ages.
All right, that's a simple explanation of a time in history, right? Something that tends to be accepted or understood by most people. That makes it a grand narrative. Here's a more recent one. Scientific progress.
Uh-huh.
People look at important inventions throughout history, light bulbs, cars, computers, and we generally believe that there's an underlying universal truth, that modern technology makes the world better. It's been the belief for so long that people accept it as being true. We don't even think of it much. We just accept that modern technology has that effect.
Well, it does make our lives better.
All right, this is where Lyotard comes in. He believed we have to be careful about accepting ideas like that. He said these beliefs really oversimplify things and that we should think more critically. Are there times when technology would not be considered progress, where it doesn't bring improvement?
Oh, I don't know, pollution? But,
No, that's good. It would be hard to say pollution was a form of improving the world.
But isn't pollution just a side effect of... Oh, so it kind of goes against the grand narrative about technology. It complicates things.
Yeah, and that's a basic idea behind postmodernism, that we should be skeptical of grand narratives, because there's a good chance they're not completely true.
You mean...
Well, not to say there's no truth in grand narratives, of course. It's just that nothing is as simple and straightforward as it seems. We should look critically at the things we assume.
Okay, I think I get it. Thanks.
What are the speakers mainly discussing? Why does the professor ask the woman about the early Middle Ages? What points does the professor make about scientific progress? Why does the woman mention pollution? Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question.
We don't even think of it much. We just accept that modern technology has that effect.
Well, it does make our lives better.
All right, this is where Lyotard comes in.
What does the professor mean when he says this?
All right, this is where Lyotard comes in.
Listen to part of a lecture in an economics class. The professor has been talking about international trade.
Okay, so let's recap from yesterday. Why do nations engage in international trade? Well, it's often because they have a surplus, more than they need. And they also trade for the opposite reason, when they have shortages and can't produce everything they want or need domestically. So these explanations are good as far as they go, but there's another scenario we need to discuss, and that is, what if a country is capable of producing something it wants or needs, but it can also import that same product from another country? Now, how does the country decide whether to make the product itself or import it? Okay, take an example. Think about the bananas that you buy in the supermarket. If you look closely, you'll see that most bananas in the United States are imported from countries with tropical climates. But the United States has warm regions. It has greenhouses. Clearly, it would be possible to grow bananas here. So why doesn't the U.S. do that? Scott?
Well, it's like a lot cheaper and more efficient for countries with tropical climates. For tropical countries to grow bananas, isn't it? I mean, they don't need greenhouses to grow bananas, and they're not so limited to certain regions.
Okay, good. That's exactly right. Tropical countries have what we call an absolute advantage in producing bananas. Absolute advantage is the term we use when a country can produce more of a product using fewer resources. They're the most efficient producer of something, and the United States can't be that with bananas, so it's better off specializing in other goods that it can make more efficiently. Let's take an example. Say we have two countries, and say they each make only two products, and they trade only with each other. Simplistic, I know, but, well, you'll see where I'm going with this in a moment. Okay, so, as I was saying, two countries, two products. One country can produce both products more efficiently than the other country. Should these two countries even trade at all?
Well, no. I mean, like, what's in it for the more efficient country?
Well, what is in it for them? Let's call these countries, X and Y. Country X makes both TVs and chairs more efficiently than country Y does. It has an absolute advantage in producing both commodities, no question. But what economists also look at is relative efficiency. And from that perspective, we see that country X is a lot more efficient at making TVs than it is at making chairs. And in country Y, well, it turns out they're more efficient at making chairs than TVs. So we say that country Y has a comparative advantage at chair making, and country X has a comparative advantage at TV making. So what should happen? Well, first, both countries should specialize in the production of just one thing, the product they're most efficient at making. Country X should make only TVs, and country Y should make only chairs. Then the two of them should trade. Specialization and trade are going to lead to increases in production, an increased overall supply of goods, and generally lower prices, right?
Professor, I still don't see how countries figure out when and where they have a comparative advantage.
Well, you can't fully understand the concept of comparative advantage without also considering the related concept of opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is what you lose, the options you have to give up in order to use your time and resources for something else. Countries can determine where their comparative advantages lie, like making TVs instead of chairs, by figuring out what they can make with the lowest opportunity cost. Maybe this will be clearer if we apply it on a personal level. Now think about when you go out to a movie. Your direct monetary cost is the price of the movie ticket, right? But you also spend 2 hours at the theater. Your opportunity cost includes both whatever else you could have spent your money on, 10 candy bars maybe, and whatever else you could have accomplished during the time you were watching the movie. You might have completed your homework for this class. Or you might have worked 2 hours overtime at your job, thereby earning instead of spending money. See, these lost possibilities are your opportunity cost.
What is the lecture mainly about? Why does the professor talk about growing bananas in countries with tropical climates? According to the professor, what indicates that a country has an absolute advantage in trade? The professor gives an example of two countries that produce televisions and chairs. What does she predict will happen if the economic decisions of both countries are based on the principle of comparative advantage? Why does the professor talk about going to the movies? Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
Say we have two countries, and say they each make only two products, and they trade only with each other. Simplistic, I know, but, well, you'll see where I'm going with this in a moment.
Why does the professor say this?
Well, you'll see where I'm going with this in a moment.
Listen to part of a lecture in an earth science class.
As you know from your reading, an air mass is, it's a large body of air that's got uniform properties in terms of temperature and moisture. There are 4 types of air masses, and the one we'll concentrate on today is the continental polar air mass. Continental polar air masses form over a continent near the poles, over areas that are typically cold and dry. And it's the polar air masses from the Arctic and northern Canada that largely influence weather patterns in the United States, especially in the east of the Rocky Mountains. Now, these continental polar air masses are not generally associated with heavy precipitation. In fact, since they generally remain dry and cold throughout their trek across North America, they bring the mostly clear skies and cooler temperatures we see throughout most of the eastern United States during the winter months. However, when a polar air mass sweeps across the Great Lakes region in late autumn and winter, it can bring extremely heavy snowfalls to that region. We refer to these snowstorms as lake effect snows whose moisture comes from the Great Lakes themselves. Let me explain how this happens. But first, here's a map of the region. You see Rochester on the southern shore of Lake Ontario and Buffalo on the far eastern shore of Lake Erie? These two cities are among the snowiest cities in America, thanks largely to the lake effect. Over one recent 10-year period, Rochester and Buffalo each received 27 meters of snow. That's nearly 90 feet. Okay, let's turn to the other pair of cities on this map, Thunder Bay and Marquette. As you can see, they're both on the shore of Lake Superior, but Marquette consistently gets 2 to 3 times more snow than Thunder Bay. Why? Basically,
what happens is that during the summer, bodies of water, especially ones as large as the Great Lakes, absorb huge amounts of energy, both from the sun and from the warm summer air that's passing over them. So the lakes become these giant reservoirs of heat. Whereas the land around the lakes, well, land doesn't store heat as effectively as water does. As a result, during the cold seasons, fall and winter, the land loses its heat quickly. The land gets cold fast. And as you go farther north, it gets very, very cold. But the lakes store heat more efficiently, so they stay warmer longer. So eventually, you get these significant temperature disparities between the lakes and the land that surrounds each one. There can be about an 8 degrees Celsius temperature difference at the southern Great Lakes and up to about a 17 degree disparity farther north, where the water is still warm, but the land is particularly cold. Then, here comes the dry continental polar air mass, cold air, moving southeastward across the fairly warm lakes. Polar air masses generally move from the north and west to the south and east. Okay, and warm air rises, right? So, the warm, moist air from the lake rises up into the cold, dry air above it. Then the difference in temperature inside the air mass creates instability, an unstable and turbulent situation in the atmosphere. As the warm air rises through the cold air, it cools down and condenses, forming clouds. In the clouds, snowflakes form, and snowfall occurs over the lake and on the downward shores. And because they're downwind, cities to the south and east of the Great Lakes will get more snow. So, because of their location, Marquette, Buffalo, and Rochester get buried each winter, while Thunder Bay on Lake Superior's northern shore doesn't get hit as hard. I should mention that many scientists predict that lake effect snowstorms will increase in frequency and intensity over the course of this century. They point out that the average temperature of the Great Lakes surface waters increased during the last century, while ice cover decreased. So, if this continues, which we certainly can't rule out, there'll be less lake water freezing and more that evaporates into the continental polar air masses for longer periods of time each winter. So winters around the Great Lakes will keep getting wetter, which means more snow. Or does it? Let me point out that if air temperatures keep increasing in the next 100 years, polar air mass temperatures will too, and winters will be much milder. And to get snow, even though these areas get a lot of precipitation, the air would still have to be cold enough to support snowfall, as opposed to rain.
What does the professor mainly discuss? According to the professor, what is true of a continental polar air mass when it forms? Lake Superior is the northernmost Great Lake. Compared with the other Great Lakes, what can be inferred about Lake Superior based on its location? The professor describes how lake effect snowstorms occur. Put the steps in order from first to last. Why is Thunder Bay not very affected by lake effect snow? What is the professor's opinion about the future of lake effect snowfalls? Now listen to a conversation between a student and a university employee.
Hi, I'm looking for the person who's responsible for the exhibition of the seniors' art projects, the one that's opening here next week.
Okay, that's me. I'm the coordinator for all the art exhibits here at the Student Center.
Oh, great. I need to talk to you about how my work is going to be put up in the gallery here when...
And you are?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Carol Lambert. I'm one of the seniors in the exhibition. But I have sort of an unusual piece to display, so I wanted to talk to you about the best way to show it.
And is it already here at the gallery?
No, I can't bring it. I can't set it up until the last minute. I need to borrow some equipment from the art department, but they'll only give it to me for the actual week of the exhibit.
Well, maybe you'd better tell me a little bit about your work.
Well, I'm doing a multimedia piece. I made this really elaborate picture frame, but instead of putting a painting in it, I want to project these abstract images that I created. You know, I found this cool software program that I'm using to do that. The images will change every couple of minutes.
Sounds complicated.
Not really. You see, the software program's automatic, and it's actually pretty simple. I had this class last semester.
So you'll borrow the equipment?
Yeah, but what I'm worried... The reason I came by, for this to look right, I need just the right kind of space.
Well, we don't usually let students choose the space where their work goes.
Oh. Well, can I tell you what I think would work best?
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I've tried this all out, you know, in the art studio, and the projector needs to be exactly 9 meters from the wall. It has to be that exact distance so the images will fit just right in the picture frame. That way, I want people to be fooled, even if it's just for a second, to think that they're looking at a real abstract painting.
Okay, we can arrange that. Do you have a stand for the projector?
Yeah, and once my picture frame is hung on the wall, I'll adjust the stand to the right height. There's one more thing.
Yes?
Well, it would be really helpful if the frame could be hung on a wall that has kind of dim lighting. If the lights are really bright, the images get kind of hard to see. But if the lights are low, then it'll look more real.
You know, we use pretty strong lighting so that the visitors can see all the pieces clearly. And we really don't want to turn it down. But come to think of it, the individual lights can be adjusted. Usually we point them so they shine directly on a particular work, but in this case, maybe we can turn the spotlights away from your piece, point them somewhere away from the wall.
Could you? That would be great.
You know, I'll be interested in seeing how this turns out.
Why does the student go to see the art gallery coordinator? What has the student created for her senior art project? What does the student imply about the use of a projector? How does the man intend to respond to the student's worries about lighting? Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question.
The images will change every couple of minutes.
Sounds complicated.
Not really. You see, the software program's automatic, and it's actually pretty simple. I had this class last semester.
So you'll borrow the equipment.
Why does the man say this?
So you'll borrow the equipment.
Listen to part of a lecture in a zoology class.
Professor, we were talking about the principles of classification, how some types of animals are related to other animals, and similarities between different kinds of animals. But I was reading the textbook last night, and it mentioned that there are lots of animals that are related to each other, even though they have some major dissimilarities. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, and I'm glad you brought that up. But first, out of curiosity, are any of you from the southwestern part of the United States? No? Well, then I'm probably explaining something a little new to most of you, because when you ask about that, the example that jumps to my mind is one type of lizard, the Gila monster. Gila monsters pretty much all live in the desert areas of the southwestern United States and in northern Mexico, parts of northern Mexico. The Gila monster looks and acts a lot like other lizards, but in one key way, it seems different. I mean, Gila monsters would be classified as lizards because, well, the Gila monster and all lizards share certain characteristics. Some of the features of the skull, the jaw, and other parts of the skeleton. All lizards inherit these features from a common ancestor. That's why they are classified as lizards. And most lizards also have things like 4 legs, a long tail, skin covered in scales, a triangular head, and, yes, Michelle?
You know, there's actually an illustration of one on, page 12 of our handouts.
Thanks, Michelle. Let's all take a look. Basically, it's a fairly large creature, I guess about 2 feet long. It has, well, you can see those spots or blotches all along its body. Mike?
You said that Gila monsters are different from most other lizards, but what you just described and the picture, well, it's like lots of other lizards.
Right. Yes, as I said, Gila monsters are like other lizards, but they have one significant difference. In contrast to nearly all other lizards, Gila monsters are venomous.
Venomous? You mean poisonous, like snakes?
Well, yes. In fact, Gila monsters are a lot like some snakes in that way, but snakes don't have all those other characteristics I mentioned before. But many kinds of snakes are venomous. So, are Gila monsters more closely related to snakes or to lizards?
Snakes?
No, lizards. It's true that Gila monsters and snakes do have that one major characteristic in common, and of course snakes and Gila monsters are both reptiles. But what helps us decide where the Gila monster belongs? Well, and this is the point I want to stress here. Similar features in different species may occur because they were inherited from a common ancestor. Then those features are a sign that the species are related. But they may also evolve independently, and they may even evolve for completely different reasons, different purposes. And that's what's happening here. Not only did the venom system of snakes and Gila monsters evolve independently, but they also function quite differently from each other. Snakes use their venom to hunt and subdue prey for food. But Gila monsters they basically use it for self-defense. You'll only see a Gila monster use its venom if it's attacked or if it feels threatened in some way. You see, Gila monsters, when they sense danger, they first try to hide, to mix in with the environment. The colors of their skin with all its spots and blotches blend well with the colors of their surroundings. But sometimes their camouflage can fail. So then, for defense, they use their venom. So getting back to the point, it would be a mistake to classify snakes and Gila monsters in the same category just because they're both venomous. Oh, there's another interesting thing about Gila monsters and their venom. There's a chemical in their venom that's being used in a new drug to help fight type 2 diabetes. And the experiments with this new drug Well, this could really represent an important medical breakthrough. It's worth noting that this chemical is only found in the venom of Gila monsters. It doesn't occur in snakes, and it doesn't occur in any other lizard.
Why does the professor discuss Gila monsters? What reason does the professor give for classifying Gila monsters as lizards? According to the professor, when do Gila monsters use their venom? Why does the professor mention chemical compounds in Gila monster venom? Why does the professor say this?
Out of curiosity, are any of you from the southwestern part of the United States?
Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
You said that Gila monsters are different from most other lizards, but what you just described and the picture, well, it's like lots of other lizards.
Why does the student say this?
But what you just described and the picture, well, it's like lots of other lizards.
Thanks for watching, and now let's check your score.